Chapter 16, The Royal Letter. It's brilliant! Genius! If that doesn't work, then nothing will. Michael, Tom and Josie all looked pretty impressed when I explained the greatest idea in the world to them on the bus to school the next day. Tom looked down at my diagram and eagerly pointed to the letter and pencil. "This bit's easy," he said. "But do you think she'll really get it?" I nodded. "She has to. It's the Royal Mail. So she has to get all her letters. It's the law. But she's the Queen. What if she's not home because she's somewhere else doing her duties and things and doesn't get it in time?" asked Michael. "It's already Friday, remember?" Michael was right. The greatest idea in the world would only work if the Queen was at home. She was always on the news going to lots of places to collect flowers from people, and I hadn't thought about what we would do if she didn't get the letter at all. "It's okay," said Josie reassuringly. "If we post a letter today, then it will get to her house by tomorrow morning. Tomorrow's only Saturday, and the gates don't close until next Friday. That gives us 6 whole days, so if she's not home, her butler will just open the letter instead, and he'll let her know right away that she needs to come home to talk to the special police and the Prime Minister." "Yes," said Michael, "exactly." "Yeah, it's going to be brilliant," said Tom as we jumped off the bus and walked to the school gates. "There's no way she won't help us, not after she reads about Armit." "But he mustn't find out," said Michael, tripping over his shoelaces, but too excited to stop and tie them up. "Yeah," I nodded. "He can't know, not until we're really sure that the Queen has found his parents." "Don't worry, we can keep it a secret. And maybe if it does work, then we'll agree to meet the Queen," grinned Tom. "I'll have to get more gel if we do," he added, stiffening his hair with his fingers so that it was spikier than ever. "Maybe we'll all get a medal for helping to keep the gates open," said Josie, kicking her football along. "And Armit too, for being so brave." Michael smiled. His smile always goes to one side when he's thinking about something that makes him really, really happy. It must be because he's so happy that his math doesn't know which way to go. "Yeah," he nodded. "One of those star-shaped medals. And if we did get one, we could pin it to our jumpers every day. Or if it's a ribbon, we could wear it around our necks," he said, touching the collar of his school jumper. I tried to imagine what it would be like to meet the Queen and be given a star-shaped medal, but the thought made my mind go blank, and I couldn't imagine anything at all. Sometimes the thought is so big that it can't squeeze all itself into my head, so no matter how hard I try, and the more I try, the more it makes my head ache. Uncle Lenny says that where headaches all come from, when you're trying to think of too many thoughts, or a giant thought tries to get in but it's too big to fit. He gets headaches all the time because he says when there's no one in the taxi with him, he doesn't have anything else to do but drive around all day and think deep thoughts that light up his mind. Maybe that's why the front of his head is always so shiny. I didn't want to get a headache, so I left the thought of the star-shaped medal alone. All that day, whenever we knew Armit couldn't hear us, we talked about the greatest idea in the world and the ways the Queen might help him and his family too. Armit caught us whispering together in the playground though, and looked at us in a confused way. "What are you saying?" he asked, looking at all of us. "Nothing," said Michael nervously. "We were just talking about homework," said Josie. "Big homework," I added, quickly crossing my fingers behind my back. "Your homework is small and easy, see, and ours is big and lots more." "Okay," Armit said slowly, but I didn't think he sounded like he believed us. After that, we all whispered an agreement not to speak about the plan until home time, which was when we planned to write the royal letter. But it seemed that the more excited we got about putting the greatest idea into the world in action, the longer it took for the day to pass. And that afternoon felt like the longest afternoon any of us had ever had. I kept looking up at the classroom clock to see if its hands had moved, and I could see Tom and Michael and Josie doing the same thing. Then finally, just as we were about to give up hope of them ever reaching 3:15, the school bell rang for home time, and Mrs. Khan said, "Right, everyone, off you go. See you all on Monday." We all hurriedly waved bye to Armit, and instead of going with him to meet his foster mum like we usually did, we ran to the bus stop just as fast as we could. There's a wall behind the bus stop just long enough to fit 5 people. After we all sat down, Josie gave me a piece of yellow paper she had taken from her class tray, and which was brand new. And Tom gave me his very best handwriting pen to use, and Michael gave me his workbook to lean on. He guessed we would have to miss 2 buses home, but it didn't matter, not when we were trying to write the most royal letter any of us had ever written before. Everyone said I should write it because I was the best at spelling. I was pretty nervous, but Tom and Josie and Michael all helped me choose what to say, so in the end it wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. This is what the royal letter looked like. "Your Royal Majesty of the United Queendom of England. Please, Mrs. Majesty, there is a new boy in our class called Armit, and he's a refugee boy from Syria, where there is a war and lots of bullies throwing bombs and hurting people. Armit had to get on a boat and walked a long way to come to our school, and had to leave his mum and dad behind in tents too. Armit needs to find them before the government closes all the gates. We thought because you own the country and the police and the Prime Minister has to listen to you, you could please ask your special police and the Prime Minister to keep all the gates open and help Armit find his family. We know the gates will close on Friday. This is just an emergency. You can find us at Nelson Primary School, and Mrs. Khan is our teacher and Miss Hemsey is Armit's special teacher. Please let us know if you can help as soon as you get this letter. Love from me, 9 3/4, Tom, 9, Michael, 9 1/2, and Josie, 9 1/4. When we had finished, Michael held it up to the light and gave it a nod. I don't really know why people like holding up things to the light, but I guess it's because they want to see through them to make sure they're okay. I was glad because even though my writing had gone wonky, everyone said it looked good. It was the longest letter I'd ever written in one go, and my hand felt so sore, so I jumped off the wall and jiggled it about. In the distance, I could see the bus coming. "Have you got a new envelope to put it in? And stamps?" said Tom anxiously as we got to the bus. "Yep, Mum's got loads," I said, "and I'll post it by 5 o'clock from the postbox in front of my flat." "Don't forget to write a special letter on the envelope in purple colouring pen," said Josie. "Purple's her favourite colour." "And make sure the stamp says first on it," said Michael. When I got home that afternoon, while Mrs. Abbey was making me fish fingers for tea, I quietly pulled open the big top drawer in the large chest standing in our living room. This drawer is called our Use Less Things drawer, because it's always full of things we have lots of, but hardly ever use, like paper clips and spare staples and elastic bands and sellotape and bright yellow post-it notes and blank bits of paper. I found an envelope and then carefully took out Mum's small wooden stamp box. Inside it were all the nearly new stamps that Mum's collected from letters she's been sent in the post. Most stamps are marked with something called a postmark, which means you can't use them again, but sometimes they aren't. When that happens, Mum claps her hands like it's Christmas morning, carefully peels the stamp away so it looks just as brand new as possible, and puts it in her stamp box. I picked out 3 that had the nicest picture with the colour purple in them and a first in the corner. I knew that most letters just had 1 stamp on them, but I thought 3 might make the letter get to the Queen faster, especially since there was a chance I might miss the 5 o'clock post. Trying to keep things a secret when there's a grown-up around always makes everything take twice as long. I told Mrs. Abbey I was doing my homework early and coloured in lots of purple swirls in the front of the envelope, and then, just before I put the letter inside it, I thought the Queen should know about Ahmet's sister in the sea, so I wrote, "P.S. Ahmet had a little sister called Soraya, and she died in the sea, so he needs to find his mum and dad even more specially. Please keep this a secret." I knew that what had happened to Ahmet's sister was a secret, but last year Mr. Thompson told us that the Queen has to keep state secrets, and if she can keep secrets about the state of everything, I knew she could keep Ahmet's secret safe from him too. Chapter 17. The Emergency Plan. After I posted the letter, I felt as if 1,000 worms and butterflies and frogs had all jumped into my tummy and were wriggling and squirming and hopping around together. I was even too excited to finish my chocolate chip cookies and glass of milk, which are my favourite Friday treats. When Mum got home, she kept looking at me and putting her hand on my head to see if I was feeling ill. I wanted more than anything to tell her about the greatest idea in the world, but we had all agreed to keep it secret, and I thought it would be more fun to surprise Mum with it all later. I spent the whole weekend trying to stay as quiet as I could in case my mouth said something when I wasn't paying attention. And even when Mum took me to a farm to see goats and donkeys and rabbits for our Sunday adventure, I couldn't help thinking about the Queen and if she'd gotten our letter yet. The whole weekend seemed to take forever to finish, but just when I thought it never would, Monday morning finally arrived. When I got to the bus stop, Tom and Josie and Michael were all waiting. "She must have read it by now," said Michael, bumping into the lamp-post in his excitement. We all paused as he quickly regained his balance and put his glasses straight. "And I bet her special policemen are looking for Ahmet's family already," said Josie, starting to half skip and half walk again, bouncing a football up and down with a loud twang. "Yeah, I bet they're jumping for special planes right now to find all of them," said Tom, gripping the straps of his rucksack as if it was really a parachute. We were still chatting excitedly as we got to the bus and spent the whole journey imagining what else the Queen might be doing to help Ahmet. But Monday passed by, and even though I looked up at Mrs. Carr after every break time hoping she had something special to say, there was no sign that anything had happened at all. Miss Hempsey looked normal too, and when we asked about Ahmet if anything exciting had happened to him, he looked puzzled and said, "Back not smell any more? Look!" before opening his rucksack and inviting each of us to smell it. On Tuesday it was the same, except this time all of us were feeling more worried and excited, and the worms, butterflies and frogs in my tummy were starting to make me feel sick. "What if she never got the letter?" whispered Josie as we were all making a drawing of different planets in the solar system. "What if it got lost in the post?" "I don't know," I whispered back, because I really didn't. "We had to think of something else," said Tom, glancing around to make sure Mrs. Carr wasn't looking. "We've only got 3 days left until the gates close." "Tom, back to work, please," ordered Mrs. Carr, looking our way. We all quickly put our heads down low. I snuck a look over my shoulder at Ahmet, who was busy colouring in a large orange circle that was obviously Mars. Tom was right. For whatever reason, the Queen wasn't helping us. We needed to think of something else. We needed an emergency plan. I looked at my half-finished drawing of the planet Earth and, turning it over, decided to draw out an emergency plan instead. While everyone else copied out facts about their planets to learn off by heart, I stared at the emergency plan and wondered if it would work. I wasn't sure that it would, but Dad always said that you could only ever know if something would work or not after you had tried it out first. That afternoon on the bus home, I showed the others my emergency plan. Josie looked at me and, placing her football underneath her chin, shook her head. That's crazy. Yeah, we can't do that. We'd get detentions for a year, said Tom. It's the only way, I said, looking at it carefully. This is what it looked like. Michael shook his head. We'll get expelled, he whispered, looking around the bus to make sure no one overheard anything. No, we won't, I said, trying to sound more sure. The special police would never let us in to see her, said Michael. They will when we explain everything, I said. We'll go when she's having her tea. That way we can be sure she's in. Everyone fell silent. I could tell they were all thinking extra hard because Josie was biting her bottom lip and Tom was looking down at his tie with a frown and Michael was tapping a finger on the lens of his glasses. After a few seconds, Tom looked up and asked, How will we afford the tube ticket? It's okay, I said, leaning in. I've got some pocket money saved up. How much have you got? Asked Josie. £4.55, I whispered, so that nobody on the bus would hear. It would have been more, but I brought some extra sweets last week. That's not enough for a ticket, tutted Michael. I've got £11.32 at home we can use. I'll bring all my pocket money too, said Josie. Me too, said Tom, and all my brothers. But how are we going to get the tube tickets? Asked Michael. Won't the ticket office people tell the police on us if they see us without a grown-up? We won't go to the ticket office. We'll just get them from the ticket machines, I said. I know how to use them. Mum shows me how to buy tickets all the time when we go on our adventures. Cool, said Josie, looking more sure. So, shall we do it then? Tomorrow, I whispered. Josie nodded and twirled the football around between her fingers. Michael looked round and, pushing up his glasses, gave a nod too. And Tom looked over at Josie and Michael before giving me a thumbs up. Okay, I said, as I tapped the end of my pencil against my cheek and looked at the plan again. I'll get some tea bags, just in case she's not expecting us and runs out. I'll get some biscuits, promised Tom. I'll bring as much pocket money as I can, said Michael. And maybe we can all get a gift for the Queen, asked Josie. You know, to make her want to help us. Should we wear anything special? Asked Tom. Don't people get dressed up when they're meeting the Queen? Like hats and dresses and crowns and things? Maybe we should put on our best clothes underneath our uniforms. Yeah, that's a brilliant idea, I said. And we can get changed in the toilets at the palace. Hold on. Michael looked at us, his large eyes even rounder and wider. We can't all go, can we? Mrs. Carr won't believe us if we say we're all sick on the exact same day, and what she calls our parents. Everyone fell quiet again. We all wanted to go and see the Queen together, but Michael was right. After a few seconds, Josie said, I can't stay behind. My parents don't like me being friends with Arm anyway. They'd probably get really mad if they found out I ran away from school for him. Let me go, said Tom. My uncle's a policeman in New York and says 411 and Tango Fox chicken and things, so I can talk to the Queen's special police. Michael sighed. Okay, so I'll stay too, even though I've always wanted to meet the Queen. Okay then, Tom will come with us, I said. Quick, it's our stop, cried out Josie, frantically pushing the bell. Later that night, as I got ready for bed, I wondered what Dad would have said if he knew I was going on an adventure to try and meet the Queen. I think he would have put on a record and danced around the living room just like he did whenever he was really happy. That last thought made all the worms and frogs and butterflies in my tummy settle down and helped me fall into a deep sleep filled with dreams of my dad dancing with the Queen. Chapter 18. Stan the Taxi Man. I'm not sure if Tintin ever woke up on the morning of an adventure feeling hungry and sick at the exact same time, but that's how I felt when I woke up the next day. It was so early that the birds had only just started to sing and the sun hadn't risen properly yet. As soon as the sky began to turn from dark blue to golden pink, I jumped out of bed and started to get ready. The hardest thing was trying to fit my school uniform over my best clothes. It made me look all puffy like a blowfish, and the buttons on my school shirt looked like they might pop open at any moment. But luckily Mum didn't notice anything because she was tired and still rubbing her eyes a lot when I left. I got to the bus stop 15 minutes early, just like we said we would, but there was no one there except an old lady and two grown-ups in suits. After a few minutes, Tom came running up the road. I could tell right away that he hadn't slept much because his eyes looked red and usually spiky hair was flat in the back. Then came Josie, looking as excited and nervous as I felt inside, and Michael, who tripped over his shoelaces and stumbled but kept on running up to us anyway. Got everything? Asked Josie. I nodded and showed her the tube map I had taken from my mum's used last drawer and the tea bags I had taken from the kitchen jar. We'd all brought things to give to the Queen. Tom had brought a packet of shortbread biscuits, Josie a new packet of football stickers, and Michael had brought a box of fudge that the Crown had in the box. I had brought my favourite astronaut ruler. Even though the astronaut didn't move anymore, I was sure the Queen would like it because she always wears sparkling brooches that shine like stars on her dresses. Maybe when she was in school she wanted to be an astronaut too. When we had stored all the presents away safely in my bag, Josie counted all the money we had collected. All of us had emptied out our piggy banks and saving jars, and Tom had gone into his brother's room to see what he could find. "They've got loads of coins everywhere. Can't believe I've never done it before," he exclaimed, bringing out a fistful of coins. In the end, we had exactly £27.62, a fortune. Half of £27.62 is... Josie squeezed her eyes tight and quickly did the maths in her head. £13.81. She gave half of the money to me and half to Tom for safekeeping. "You sure know which tube to take?" asked Josie. The freckles on her face were sliding up and down because she was scrunching up her nose every few seconds. She only ever does that when she's extra nervous, and it makes her look like a hamster. "Yep, we take the pink line to King's Cross, and then a dark blue line to Green Park," I said. "Mum always takes me on the trains for our really big adventures, so I know the way." "How far is the palace from the train station?" asked Tom. His voice sounded squeaky, but I couldn't tell if that was because he was nervous or excited. "I don't know," I said, "but I don't think there's a bus stop in front of the palace, so we might need to take a taxi. It shouldn't be too far, though, so hopefully we won't spend all our money." "Guys, our bus is here," said Michael, as he stuck out his hand so that the bus driver would stop. "Remember what to tell Mrs. Khan," I whispered loudly, "that me and Tom are sick and that our mums will be back tomorrow." Josie nodded. "Good luck," and giving us a quick wave, she followed Michael into the bus to school. After the bus had disappeared, Tom and I crossed the street and walked up to the bus stop where all the buses were travelling in the opposite direction stopped. When the bus we finally needed came, I put out my hand and we got on, nervously looking at the bus driver in case she asked us why we weren't to school, but she didn't. In fact, she barely even looked at us. We sat on the bus all the way to the last stop, and then, holding hands, crossed the big road to the tube station. There were at least 1,000,000 people, all dressed in suits, rushing around to try and get through the barriers. They looked angry and red in the face, and there was lots of tutting and head shaking. I had never been to the train station when it was so busy before, and I didn't like it. It made my head feel hot and fuzzy. "Come on," said Tom, nudging me. We walked over to the ticket machines where there was a long line of people. Some of us looked down at us with frowns on their faces, but no one said anything, so we didn't have to say anything back. When we finally got to the front of the queue, we walked up to one of the machines. It looked more scary than I remembered. There were at least 100 buttons surrounding a large screen and a slot that looked like a letterbox at the bottom. "Go on," whispered Tom. "Okay," I said. Not wanting to be a coward, I took a deep breath, stood up on my toes and walked over to the screen. I pressed the button for new ticket, then child, and then typed in Buckingham Palace for the destination, but nothing happened. I tried again, but the machine started flashing. "Do you kids need help?" asked a woman from the queue. She was dressed in a green coat and shiny shoes and had curly black hair and glasses. Tom's eyes became wide and he shook his head, but I nodded. The woman stepped forward. "Where do you need to go?" she asked. "Buckingham Palace," I said. "For our school trip." I tried to make my voice more deep and grown-up sounding. The woman frowned, but then looking at her watch said, "Okay." She quickly pressed lots of buttons and on the screen, then said, "There you go," before stepping back in the line again. We looked up at the machine, which was flashing. £8.90 asked. Tom quickly got the money out of his bag and put in the exact change. 2 pieces of pink card instantly popped out like sweets from a sweet machine, and grabbing them, we thanked the lady and ran down the stairs to where I knew the trains for the city would be. We squeezed ourselves onto the platform. It was so full of people that I was afraid we wouldn't be able to get on the train. I'd never seen so many people squashed together in one place before. But when the train came, everyone flooded onto it like a giant wave and took us with them. Tom grabbed hold of my arm and I grabbed his, and we soon found ourselves pressed like sandwich filling between lots of people, all busy looking at their phones or listening to music. "This is good," said Tom, his face squashed up against a large belly. I tried to nod, but someone's book was touching my head. We watched as lots of stations passed by and looked at all the different people getting on and off the train. Finally, we heard the driver announce that the next station was going to be King's Cross. "We have to follow the dark blue line," I said to Tom after we had jumped out onto the platform. We followed signs for the Piccadilly line and got on another train. Easy. Now that I wasn't feeling so nervous, I realised I was hungry. I'd been so busy packing a present for the Queen, I'd forgotten about the emergency bag of sweets I had meant to bring. "Do you think the Queen would mind if we had one of her biscuits?" I asked Tom. He shook his head eagerly. "She must have lots in her kitchen, especially if she has tea every day." He ripped open the packets and passed me one of the thick, crumbly fingers that lay inside. It was the most delicious biscuit I had ever had, probably because I knew it was meant to be eaten by the Queen. We had another biscuit each on the train, and after just a few minutes the train lady announced, "The next station is Green Park. Please alight here for the Jubilee and Victoria lines." I like the train lady. She has a nice voice. I imagine she looks like Mary Poppins and sits at the very front of the train next to the driver in her own special chair. It must be fun going to all the stations and telling people which ones are coming next. We hurried off the train and followed the signs to the taxis. Running up the stairs, we found a long line of black cabs waiting in a row. Inside the one at the front was a man with curly red hair. He was eating a sandwich, bobbing his head along to the radio station. When he saw us looking at him through the window, he rolled it down and out. "What can I do for you two?" "Please, we need to get to Buckingham Palace." I said, just as loudly and as clearly as I could, because I remember my Uncle Lenny saying that there was nothing taxi drivers hated more than people who didn't say where they wanted to go clearly enough. The taxi man leaned forward and looked around. Why are you on your own? He asked, frowning. We're meeting our teacher there. We're on a trip and we got separated from our class, and our teacher said that if anyone got lost we had to meet the class there, said Tom, all in a rush. The taxi man frowned again and rubbed his chin. All right, he said eventually. Hop in. And be quick about it. I ain't here to be chauffeuring lost kids around all day. You're lucky it's only a few minutes away and I've got tykes of my own. We jumped in quickly. The taxi man locked the doors and, in a single move, swerved off. As he drove out onto the main road, he looked at us in a funny rectangular-shaped mirror that cars always have right at the front. Uncle Lenny says they're there so that drivers can check the traffic behind them, but I think they're there so that drivers can look at people sitting in the back seat when they think that no one is looking at them. What will you be doing at Buckingham Palace today, then? He asked. We're going to meet the Queen, said Tom, before I could stop him. Is that right now? Asked the taxi man, looking at us again in the mirror. His eyes were smiling. Tom clapped his hands over his mouth and didn't say anything else, but the taxi man just laughed and said, Well, when you see her, say hi from me. I nodded, and the taxi man laughed again. After a few minutes, the taxi came to a stop in traffic. The taxi man looked at his watch. They will be doing the change in the guard soon. We have to walk from here, I'm afraid. He turned around to look at us and pointed to his right. See those arches there? Just walk under them and keep going straight down the big red road, okay? The palace is right at the end, past the water fountain. Tom nodded and took out the exact money it said on the meter. The taxi man shook his head. Don't worry, that one's on me. Just tell your teacher to be more careful next time. Thanks, said Tom as we jumped out. You're the best taxi driver ever. The taxi man drove off laughing. I like London taxi drivers, said Tom, taking out another two of the Queen's biscuits and stuffing them in his mouth. They're better than the New York ones. So do I said, watching as the taxi disappeared out of sight.